Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for SBAM's Small Business Briefing. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues here at SBAM. Brian Kelly is enjoying a day off. So first up, I do want to start by thanking our sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. You can learn more at consumerscu.org. And now I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Kelli Saunders, SBAM's soon-to-be Vice President of Policy Engagement. Kelli, let's kick things off right away with some great news on access to broadband.
Well, it's great to be with everybody today. And yes, I will do my best to fill our fearless leader's shoes, but we have some very exciting news regarding broadband. Earlier this week, there was an announcement made that there will be a huge allocation of funds from the federal government. To set the stage a little bit, I want to talk about our relationship with our state office called the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office. That was actually created by Governor Whitmer by executive order in June of 2021. And then they were staffed up by April of 2022. That's housed in the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. And so we have enjoyed a great relationship with the MyHigh office. They've included us in their stakeholder roundtables as they've geared up to accept this funding. So we are very grateful for that opportunity to partner with them so that they can hear what small business needs are as we anticipated this funding. So just as a background internally on broadband, our chair, Park Kurzman, had actually created a task force within SBAM to basically address needs that we're seeing across the board. We know that Michigan is diverse. We have different topography. We have urban centers. We have rural counties. We have suburban neighborhoods. And so we really needed to be able to address the wide spectrum of all that encapsulates Michigan when it relates to broadband. So Gina Thorson of Stormy Cromer, who's also our treasurer on our board, is the one who led that task force. And we're in the process of producing our report that we can submit to the MyHigh office so that they can take the needs of small business owners into account as they put together their plan. So as we lay out kind of the context and the background of how we've been involved with the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, and the way that we continue to partner with them so that our needs are heard on their side of this equation. We're really excited to announce that the Department of Commerce, they have the National Telecommunications and Information Administration announced allocation of funding for the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, otherwise known as BEAD, to all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, to deploy affordable and reliable high-speed internet service to everyone in America. So Michigan's allocation came in at $1.5 billion. And it's needed, and that number seems huge, but it's because we do have our state has a lot of girth. It's very big, you know, from the tip of the mitt to the bottom, and then the UP. This money is going to be needed in order to solve the issues that we currently encounter when it comes to high-speed internet access. And so we were fourth in the states in order of receiving the top amount of money. We only came in behind Texas, California, and Missouri. And so just as a reminder why this is occurring, the Biden administration's goal was to deploy affordable and reliable high-speed internet to everyone in America. It's also known as the Internet for All initiative. And so what are the next steps? What does this mean? These allocations will actually be notified officially tomorrow by the Biden administration. And then what will happen is that Michigan will have to put together its plan on how they will use these resources throughout Michigan in all counties, in all communities, on how they plan to basically scale up and equip Michigan to have this internet for all motto and then put it into place. So what we heard from the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity earlier today is that the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office is already working on their plan to submit to the federal government. Once that plan is received and approved, It will then be basically accepted or tweaked if they want to see some changes, and will occur basically on a rolling basis on the funds being allocated to all the states, only receiving up to 20% to start, because this is going to be a years long project, and not just 1 year. I'm talking 4 to 5 years, because the infrastructure has to be built. And we know that in some of our smaller communities where there's volunteer leadership, that has to be supported. There's not going to be natural infrastructure in place in order to help communities on a smaller scale up. And then we know that we have to help maybe some of our most populated areas also put people in place that know how to basically apply this infrastructure and get it in the ground, or however they see, fit for that area. And so we will be submitting our task force report sometime next month, so that our small business needs are taken into consideration as they're building out the plan. And we will continue to keep you engaged and updated on what happens with those funds and how we can play a bigger part moving forward in the next 4 to 5 years in making sure that our communities are equipped for internet for all.
It really is an exciting opportunity, and one that we've celebrated this week here at SBAM. So thanks for that update, Kelly. So we're also joined today by Michelle Beebe, and Michelle is here to give us some updates on some SBAM benefit programs. We have 3 new or changing opportunities happen. So Michelle, thanks for joining us today. Do you want to start with a change coming to our COBRA administration program?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's nice to connect with our members. One of the new things that we've been working on is more technology in our COBRA space, and really investing in a product that's going to be the best solution for our members and our agent partners. So effective August 1st, we're partnering with a new company called iSolved, and nothing changes on the SBAM side. You're still going to have your favorite COBRA partner, and you're still going to be able to talk to your friends. We're going to take good care of you in that space, but we have changed our technology. And one of the biggest upgrades for us is being allowed to have integration with Ben admin platforms like Navigator or Ease, and it really allows for us to have an ease of doing business. And we're so excited about this because we've been being asked this from the market for years now, and that we have a solution. It's going to be available August 1st. So, and for those of you that aren't using our COBRA services, if you're COBRA eligible, please give us a call. Our team is amazing. You get custom interaction. You have one rep that handles your whole, account from start to finish, and it's just an amazing service, and it's underutilized. Honestly, it's just top notch, and it's very affordable. So I'm very excited that we're going to have the technology to back up the service that's already excellent. So look for more information coming from us, but definitely ready to go for August 1st.
That is good news. I know our corporate department is amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these changes are implemented. So you've got a couple of new things coming up too, one of which has been in the works for a while now, and that's cyber insurance. What can you tell us about that program?
Yes, so it's been, a need that we've heard from our members, that we need to have a solution and support from them in the cyberspace. And so we're very excited to add kind of the third prong to our stool. And we have a partner with Sensei that's helps you on the front end to make sure you're checking your cyber hygiene, that your what your hygiene score is, making sure that you're prepared for have all of your documentation, your processes in place. And then we partner with RiskAssure that helps make sure that you have the right tools to evaluate how much cyber insurance you actually need and how you can protect your whole organization instead of just guessing, right? Like that, I don't know if we're fully insured or not, and we've got the right price model or not. But and so we've partnered with RiskAssure to help alleviate that pain and for you to have just-in-time monitoring to make sure that your risk stays below what you're insured for. And then what we're really super excited with is that we have partnered with an organization to offer cyber insurance, because that's been the missing piece, right? We had those other things, but now, hey, I'm ready. I've got all my risk under control and taken care of, but how do I know I'm getting the best deal related to the insurance? And so we've partnered with MAIA agency here in Michigan to offer cyber insurance policies. But what we love about this is that it's we have access to the 10 best carriers in the country. And so it isn't a one size fits all, depending on your industry, your risk, all of those things. One carrier might be a better fit for you than another. And that we're just so excited about this, because we're really going to be able to customize your cyber insurance policy for what's best for your individual business. And so we're having a webinar mid-July to talk about all three of these products and how they complement each other, and that you may need just one avenue or you may need the other, but the all three of them together kind of is the whole bucket, taking care of all of your cyber needs. And it's, one of those things that unfortunately, as a business owner, sometimes you don't have time to worry about. And so we're bringing the experts to you and making sure that you have those solutions in place. So watch out in July. We've got some good solutions coming to you in this space.
And I will say, if you're interested in that webinar, you can go to sbam.org/events. And I think it's July 10th. So just scroll down a bit and you'll be able to register. All right. And then the last program that you've been hard at work on is related to the employee retention credit, the tax credit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So obviously, we pay attention to the data on our website. It's one of the most popular items that we get hits on our website for, that business owners are still looking for solutions in this space, wanting to know if they're eligible for the credit. And we're happy to say that we have done a very extensive vetting process, and we are working with 2 new vendors. And we will be announcing this again in July. So lots of good stuff happening in the month of July, but they are reputable organizations, because we know there's a lot of fly-by-night organizations out there offering these services. And we wanted to make sure that our members had really qualified organizations to partner with, making sure that you're getting the best possible deal, making sure that the deal that has been given and submitted your application for the credit to the IRS has everything documented, so that there's no audit on the back end, that you're taken care of on the front end. There's no exchange of between the IRS, and they take care of all of that pain for you. And we've partnered with 2 vendors because they have different niches, and so that you can take a look at what each of them offer and which one is the best fit for you as an organization. So we're very excited about this. I think the big message here is you may be told by your CPA or your lawyer, hey, you're not eligible. You've got a PPP loan, you can't get this. You actually thrived through COVID, all of those different messages that might be out there. And that's just not true. So depending on your industry, what you went through during COVID, all of those kinds of things, we want to make sure that you're taking advantage of this credit that's available. So I'm very excited, because we really spent a lot of time making sure that we had the right partners for our members. So again, good information coming to you for the month of July. And happy 4th of July.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Yes, and happy 4th of July. All right, we are going to talk a little bit now about the budget. So Kelli, we have a state budget. It all happened late last night, and it's massive, $81+ billion massive. So we're going to dive into kind of some of the details, but let's talk about 2 of the biggest pieces of the budget first, which are the general fund and the school aid fund.
Yes, Sarah, and I've got my notes here, everybody. So bear with me. I'm going to be looking down because I want to make sure that you have the proper information, that the numbers are right. And I want you to trust that we have researched it here at SBAM. We've been hard at work ever since yesterday, pulling pieces out of this budget that are relevant to us as here at SBAM and to you as small business owners. And so it is a whopping $81.7 billion budget. This is a 3% increase from last year. I think it's easy to say it's the biggest budget we've seen ever. And the question may be, why is it so large? What has happened? Well, Michigan tends to be in a very sound fiscally, in a sound fiscal place. But we are seeing unprecedented amounts of money flowing into Michigan from the federal government. The key to this is that a lot of that is one-time funding. And so the reason we're seeing this robust budget this year is because of that. And so when there are two pieces that are kind of always looked at on the front end, which is the general fund and the school aid fund, as Sarah mentioned. So the general fund will receive $15.2 billion, the school aid fund $19.4 billion, and then the rest, because you're saying, Kelly, that doesn't add up to $81.7 billion. You're correct. My math is, I promise, good, in the sense that the rest of the funds are allocated amongst the departments. So the Department of Agriculture, Labor and Economic Opportunity, Corrections, they all have their own budgets. And so the two that are often highlighted are those that we're talking about. But I want to set the kind of the story, if you will, about how we came here. So the budget is definitely being applauded by the governor and obviously her legislative partners. We have to remember that this is the first time in 40 years where the governor is a Democrat, the House is controlled by Democrats, and so is the Senate. And so for the first time ever, they're working on their agenda in order to get, things over this budget line that they wanted to focus on. And so it's important to note that the governor made her budget presentation back in February, as you remember. And then after that, it's that kind of sets the tone for these are the governor's priorities, and these are kind of the guardrails or the priorities she wants the legislature to focus on. Remember that the executive office and the legislature are two separate branches of government, and so they really do have to try and work together. So what we saw about a month and a half later is that the House introduced a budget that they preferred, and the Senate introduced a budget that they preferred. These were three very different budgets. And so over the last few months, I remember being on a couple different small business briefings when Sarah was out and talking to Brian about its budget season and what that means. And so for the last few months, they've had to have their own conversations about what they could come together on, the Senate, the House, and the governor, and what they wanted to focus on, because everybody had different priorities. And don't discount the Republicans. They play a very important role in this process, that they have their own priorities that they're fighting for within their districts. And so not all Democrats agree with each other on their priorities. Obviously, Republicans don't always either. And so what we saw was everybody had to come together to figure this out. And so I will say it's interesting because there was definitely some consensus. We did see some Republicans vote for this budget. And so, they can say it's a bipartisan budget, that Republicans did vote for it. And so it's interesting to see all this play out. Now, why this is good in the grand scheme of things. We know that schools and locals have to plan their own budgets based on the state budget. And so getting this budget done by the end of June and being able to send it to the governor allows schools and allows locals to figure out their budgets so that when the fiscal year rolls over, that everybody just knows what they have, they've made their plans, and they can move on. And so I would say in this budget process, it was a win for this Democratic legislature and this governor to get this done before the end of June. Much like they're supposed to. But as one news outlet said, it was little fanfare. It went with immediate effect. There was not really a huge fight, at least not outwardly, from Republicans or Democrats. They took their time. They sent everybody home on Tuesday night. They came back Wednesday and they got it done. And so it's very interesting to see how it all played out. And I think for the Democrats, while they're receiving some pushback on a lot of this being one-time funding, they're walking away saying, we had the money, we're allocating it for priorities, and we'll figure out the rest later. And so we'll dive into the details, Sarah, if you want to key us up for the next topic.
So many details. We won't go line by line, but we will do a few buckets here. And let's start with education, which includes both K-12 and higher education.
Yes, so I'll read through some of the top priorities that are important to us. Like I said, we'll start with K-12, 611 million to increase per pupil funding by 5%. That's a big jump for per pupil. So that's an additional $458 per student, which is a total of 9,608 per pupil. That is a big jump. 450 million deposit into a new rainy day fund for schools, which sets aside what they are saying future resources for what is termed a long-term financial stability within the state's public education system. 328 million for mental health and school safety, 254 million to expand free pre-K for up to 5,600 kids. This basically works towards the governor's goal of pre-K for all by the end of her term. And obviously we have supported that in the past. 204 million for a total of 952 million for funding for academically at risk or economically disadvantaged students. 160 million to provide 1.4 million public school students with free breakfast and lunch. As you remember, when the governor made her budget presentation, this was one of the key highlights in her the part of her education budget that she wanted to get over the finish line, and the Senate and the House both supported that. 25 million for additional supports for vocational education and career and technical education starting in high school. So those are those career technical institutes where kids may opt to do trades in the future. Obviously something that we've supported in the past as well. And then kind of interesting, cyber charter schools, they were basically, we thought they would be getting a 20% cut, and actually they decided to hold that flat at the current foundation allowance. So that was kind of a little bit of a pivot in the educational space to stick with the cyber charter schools with the funding that they're at. So for the K-12 portion, that's a big rundown. I hope your head's not spinning with numbers, but these are some large dollar amounts. The governor and this legislature have always said that they are committed to providing more funding for education, and we are definitely seeing that with the presentation of this budget.
And then Kelly, what about some of the other issues with higher education? For example, Reconnect, a program that SBAM has supported.
Yeah, so in the higher ed space, we saw a 5% ongoing increase for university and community college operations. Obviously, community colleges are pivotal to a lot of the workforce programs that we've talked about, like Reconnect. And then Sarah, I think what I might do is just actually flow right into the labor and economic opportunity budget, because that is where Reconnect is housed. And the LEO obviously budget is probably one of the most big budgets when it comes to those departments getting allocations. So we focus a lot of our work and our time and attention with LEO, and for instance, with the broadband work that's housed within LEO that we just talked about at the beginning of the show. And so LEO actually takes up $2.8 billion as a part of this budget, which is pretty big. So Sarah, you just recognized that 70 million will be allocated to the Reconnect program, which we've supported and still support. The threshold for age was 25. They're lowering it 1 year to 21 years old to get more people in the pipeline. And so we were thrilled to see that. Now, I just want to note that is for 1 year only. They basically set the stage that for next year's budget, it's going to go back up to 25. Additional things to consider: Going Pro, another program that we have supported, received just short of $54 million in this budget to continue its work. We're thrilled to see that. A little bit controversial, we've talked about the SOAR fund. It's mainly to land a lot of the big deals, like the GM plant that is here in Lansing. And it's kind of, I'll say, I don't want to say it's wore out its welcome, but it has kind of a bad stigma towards it, because people are just kind of sick of talking about it, to be honest. But that did see an annual deposit of 500 million into it to continue to attract bigger investments here in Michigan. And then 350 million to a new fund called Make It in Michigan Competitiveness Fund. And that's to win federal resources into the state, much like what the governor was doing with the CHIPS legislation to try and draw down federal dollars into Michigan. 15 million for talent action teams to fast track assistance to businesses looking to expand or locate in Michigan. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper on that because we're not really aware of it, but it sounds interesting. Talent action teams, we'll see how that's defined. 10 million to promote Michigan as a destination for special events and national conventions. And then they also allotted 5 million to the Michigan Defense Center for protect and grow of defense and homeland security here in Michigan, which we know is really important to our overall economic growth, because we have so many great companies and places that support our defense industry here in Michigan. So that's kind of encapsulates Leo, which is just a huge department for us.
All right, and now we're going to talk about, everyone's favorite topic this time of the year, the roads. The orange barrels are being pulled for this weekend, but what's in the budget for infrastructure going forward?
Yes, well, we know this is the governor's favorite topic, for better, for worse. And so we saw 416 million put in to build up just public infrastructure, 80 million investment supporting Michigan's bridge bundling program to replace or rehabilitate more than 20 structurally deficient bridges. And then an interesting piece in this space is allocating $1 million to completely transition the state of Michigan's fleet to electric vehicles, which is something that obviously the governor's been passionate about as we move towards these kinds of choices in what we drive to work. But that's an interesting allocation to kind of see as the state. We have many people that travel all over to do inspections and whatnot, but an interesting line item to see that the state is moving towards.
Another item of note was an increase from Health and Human Services for direct care workers.
Yeah, this is an interesting piece just because the narrative has often been set, and I think by many agreed upon in the legislature, that direct care workers often tend to be underpaid just for the hard work that they do. And so there's $140 million increase to wages for direct care workers. Why I find this interesting is because the governor had supported in her initial budget basically $1.50 raise for this industry. With the budget being unveiled yesterday, it basically got negotiated down to 85 cents a worker. And so this is kind of an illustration of what I talked about in the beginning. There were clearly negotiations going on all sides to say, where do we want to spend money? And so we see that maybe there were other priorities that took place and they didn't take the governor up on her $1.50 raise. But the fact that we see that direct care workers are getting, some extra money does show that they are, again, trying to put some of their priorities in place and to stick to their agenda when it comes to that specific industry and raising wages for direct care workers.
And what about the rainy day fund? Are there any deposits going there?
Yes, we did see 200 million into what is called the Budget Stabilization Fund, or the Rainy Day Fund, bringing the balance to almost to $2 billion at the end of fiscal year 24. The governor made it clear that she was very proud of that. And so with that, really the budget's on its way to the governor. We hear that she'll probably sign that sometime in July, and we will keep you updated. She does have the trustee veto pen at her disposal should she choose to not move forward with things. But overall, her posture last night in social media and through the news is that she's very proud of this budget and how she worked alongside her colleagues in the legislature to get it across the finish line.
And of course, the budget wasn't the only thing to get passed out of the legislature yesterday. Anything else of note we need to talk about?
Yeah, so we had been alerting you to some problematic legislation. Senate Bill 14, which is called No Stricter Than Federal, did pass out of the chamber yesterday. And just a reminder, that's Michigan's current law prohibits state agencies from adopting rules stricter than applicable federally mandated standards in most instances. So that looks to repeal that statute so that they can go further than the federal guidelines. We know you as small business owners face numerous challenges in navigating complex complex regulatory environments. We were against this bill. We will, even though it's on its way to the governor's desk, we will still let the governor's office know that we would like her to veto this because we know that it brings some complications in the future that could make doing business for you troublesome. And so we're hopeful that she would consider doing that. But signs kind of point to that she probably will sign it, and we obviously will keep you updated on what this means from a department standpoint on enforcement and how they would notify you of stricter rules than the federal guidelines. And then
was there some positive news though too?
yes, we will end on a positive note. So also the TIF bills that Brian brought up last week, they were passed out of the Senate as well. This is Senate Bills 129 through 132. They allowed tax increment financing to support housing development activities. It was bipartisan. They granted the bills immediate effect. We had a large part to play in that. And the governor, obviously, we feel she will sign it, has $5 million appropriated to be made available for grants to local units of government who adopt pro-housing zoning reforms. And the MEDC's Redevelopment Ready Communities Program is expected to administer those funds. So when we find out more information, we will share that with you. But great legislation that went through that we supported. We love seeing people work across the aisle, and this is a great example of that.
All right, so Kelly, thank you for doing the homework and going through the budget for all of us. We are actually going to be off next week, so no small business briefing next week. And SBAM will also be closed July 3rd and 4th. Brian and I will be back here on July 10th, where he can go into a deep dive into some of these budget items and get us all up to speed. Have a great 4th of July. We'll be back here July 10th, and we'll see you then.
Have a great 4th of July, everybody.